All right, welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
This time, we're going to be looking at this whole concept of the beggar's position,
Okay.
which is something I came across on Apostle Israel Aloja's Mindful Minutes podcast.
Uh-huh.
And it's interesting because he's basically suggesting that many of us might be living with a beggar's mindset.
Yeah.
And I think most people, when they hear that, they
Right.
immediately think of, someone who's like literally begging for money.
Yeah.
But that's not really what he's getting at. It's
Right.
more about
I think
just feeling powerless
just feeling powerless.
and dependent on others,
Exactly.
which is a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring in our expert here
Sure.
to kind of unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you make of this whole beggar's position idea?
Well, I mean, it's a really powerful metaphor.
Yeah.
I think the way that he uses the image of a beggar on the street
Yeah.
to illustrate this mindset of constantly looking to other people
Yeah.
for solutions and opportunities.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting about it is that it can resonate with anyone,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of their actual financial situation.
Right.
Like you might be super successful in your career,
Yeah.
but still feel like a beggar in your relationships
That's a great point. Yeah.
or in your health or in other areas of your life.
Yeah, it's not really about your external circumstances,
Exactly.
more about your internal state.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating. And he even brings in this theological perspective,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting. He quotes Genesis 1.28,
Mm-hmm.
where it says, humanity should be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it,
Okay.
which I found pretty thought-provoking.
Right.
How do you interpret that in the context of the beggar's position?
Well, there are definitely a few different ways to look at that passage.
Uh-huh.
I think some people might see it as this call to dominate nature,
Yeah.
but I think other people might interpret it more metaphorically. Like it could be about taking charge of our own lives and our own potential
Yeah.
and recognizing that we have the ability to shape our own destiny
Okay.
rather than just waiting for things to happen to us.
So less about controlling the world around us,
Yeah.
more about controlling our own responses,
Yes.
our own actions.
Yeah, it's about moving from a passive mindset
Okay.
to an active one.
Gotcha.
It's recognizing we have choices.
Uh-huh.
We can make things happen.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? I mean, he talks about this 3-step process
Right.
to get out of this
Out of this beggar's position.
beggar's position.
Yeah.
And the first one is changing your mindset,
Mm-hmm.
taking action, and trusting in God's plan.
Oh.
So let's break that down.
Yeah.
So first he says, we need to shift from a victim mentality to a victor mentality.
Right.
But what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
How do we even recognize if we're stuck in a victim mindset?
I think it's about becoming aware of our own thought patterns.
Okay.
Do you often find yourself blaming external factors for your setbacks
Uh-huh.
or feeling like you have no control over your circumstances?
Okay.
Those are some signs of a victim mentality.
Right.
And it's not about denying that challenges exist,
Yeah.
but it's more about focusing on what you can control,
Okay.
even in difficult situations.
So instead of saying, this is happening to me,
Right.
it's more about how can I respond to this?
Exactly.
How can I maybe change this?
Yeah.
Or what's the lesson here?
It's about shifting from that feeling of powerlessness
Okay.
to a sense of agency.
Gotcha.
So instead of waiting for someone to rescue you
Oh.
or for things to magically change,
Right.
you start asking yourself, okay, what steps can I take to improve my situation?
Yeah.
What resources are available to me? What can I learn from this experience?
I'm starting to see how this beggar's position can be really subtle.
Yeah, it is.
You might not be literally begging for money, but you could be mentally and emotionally begging for solutions.
Exactly.
Validation.
Yeah, and it's often unconscious.
Right. Yeah.
We don't even realize we're doing it.
Yeah.
But once you become aware of it, you can start to challenge those thought patterns
Okay.
and consciously choose a different approach.
This is really making me rethink some of my own habits.
Yeah.
Now, his second step is taking action.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's very clear that faith without works is dead.
Right.
So it's not enough to just think positively
No.
or wish for a better life.
You have to actually do something about it.
You got to do something.
Right? Take some action.
Yeah. And taking action is going to look different for everyone. It's
Yeah.
about identifying what steps you can take, however small,
Uh-huh.
to move towards the life you want to create.
So for some people, it might be starting a new project.
Yeah.
For others, it might be learning a new skill.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe finally having that difficult conversation they've been putting off.
It's something like that.
It's about identifying those areas where you've been passively waiting for things to change
Yeah.
and asking yourself, what one action can I take today
Yeah.
to shift the energy in this area?
And then there's that final step in his process, which is trusting in God's plan.
Right.
And I know this is a concept that can resonate differently for
Yeah.
different people.
For sure.
What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's definitely a complex idea,
Yeah.
but at its core, I think it's about having faith.
Okay.
And not necessarily in a religious sense,
Right.
but in the idea that there's a bigger picture at play.
Okay.
It's about trusting that things are unfolding as they should, even when it doesn't feel like it.
Right.
You know, it's about surrendering to the journey,
Yeah.
trusting the process.
But how do we balance that trust
Right.
with the need to take action and
Yeah.
shape our own destiny?
Uh-huh.
Those two ideas seem to be kind of at odds with each other,
That's a great question.
don't they?
And it's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah.
But I don't think it has to be in either proposition.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I see it more as finding a balance between surrender and effort.
Okay.
So you can trust that there's a bigger plan while also taking responsibility for your choices and actions.
So it's not about passively waiting
Right.
for things to fall into place,
No.
but about actively participating
Exactly.
in the unfolding of our lives,
Yeah.
while acknowledging that there might be forces at play that we don't fully understand.
Precisely.
Okay.
You have a role to play
Yep.
in shaping your own destiny.
Right.
But you're not in complete control.
Right.
It's about embracing both your agency and your limitations
Okay.
and finding a way to move forward with both faith and action.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So we've covered a lot of ground already.
we have.
We've talked about what the beggar's position is,
Uh-huh.
how to recognize if we're stuck in that mindset. And we've touched upon his 3-step process for getting out of it.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways for our listeners so far?
Well, first, I think it's important to recognize
Yeah.
that the beggar's position is a mindset that anyone can fall into.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said before, it's not about your actual financial situation.
Right.
It's about your internal state.
Yeah.
So, do you feel powerless and dependent on external factors
Okay.
for your happiness and success?
Uh-huh.
If so, you might be in a beggar's position.
And we've just started exploring his 3 steps to escape this mindset.
Right.
Changing your mindset from victim to victor,
Yeah.
taking action, and trusting in a bigger plan.
Yeah.
What are your initial thoughts on these steps?
They all have their own nuances, don't they?
Yeah,
I think we'll definitely need to dive deeper into each of these steps
absolutely.
to really understand how they work
Uh-huh.
and how we can apply them to our own lives.
Absolutely. We've got a lot more to unpack.
We do.
But before we do, I'd love to hear from you, the listener. Yeah.
What resonates most with you
Right.
about this concept of the beggar's position?
Yeah. Have you ever felt stuck in that kind of mindset?
What are you curious to explore further?
Yeah. Great questions.
All right, we'll be back after the break.
Sounds good. It's fascinating how he connects this idea of self-empowerment
Yeah.
with this biblical mandate to subdue the earth.
Right.
And I don't think he's talking about exploiting nature or anything,
No.
but more about taking responsibility
yeah.
for shaping our environment,
Yeah.
our circumstances,
Uh-huh.
ultimately our own lives.
Like we're not just meant to exist passively.
No, right.
We're meant to actively participate in creating the life we want.
Yeah, exactly.
And this leads perfectly into his 3-step process for getting out of the beggar's position,
Right.
which we started to touch on.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that the first step is about changing your mindset from that of a victim to a victor.
Uh-huh.
I think a lot of people can relate to feeling like a victim sometimes. Yeah.
But how do we make that shift to feeling like a victor?
Well, I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Can you identify
Yeah.
areas in your life where you might be unconsciously playing the victim?
Oh, interesting.
Perhaps you blame external factors for your setbacks
Uh-huh.
or avoid taking responsibility for your choices.
Okay.
Recognizing these patterns is the first step towards changing them.
So instead of saying, this always happens to me,
Right.
you start asking, what choices have I made that led to this outcome?
Exactly.
And what can I do differently next time?
That's a great example.
Okay.
It's about shifting the focus
Yeah.
from those external circumstances
Uh-huh.
to your own actions and choices.
Okay.
And again, it's not about denying the reality of challenges,
Right.
but it's about recognizing that you have the power
Okay.
to respond to them in a way that empowers you,
Yeah.
rather than making you feel helpless.
That reminds me of something you said earlier about reframing that Genesis passage
Right.
as a call to take charge of our lives
Yeah.
rather than to control nature.
Right.
It's about recognizing our own agency.
Mm-hmm.
But how does that actually translate into practical steps?
Yeah.
His second step is taking action.
Okay.
What might that look like for our listener?
Well, taking action will look different for everyone.
Right.
It's about identifying specific steps that you can take
Yeah.
to move toward the life you envision.
Okay.
And the key is to break down your larger goals
Yeah.
into smaller, manageable actions.
Right.
What's one small step you can take today?
Yeah.
Even if it's just making a list,
Okay.
doing some research, or having a conversation.
It's almost like breaking free from that beggar mentality
Yeah,
requires us to become entrepreneurs of our own lives.
that's a great way to put it.
You know, we
Yeah.
have to take initiative, create opportunities,
Mhm.
and be resourceful in finding solutions.
It's about adopting a proactive problem-solving approach,
Hmm.
rather than waiting for someone else to hand you the answers or to fix things for you.
Now, this brings us to his third step,
Okay.
which is trusting in God's plan.
Right.
And this one might be a bit trickier for some people to grasp,
Yeah, for sure.
especially those who aren't particularly religious.
Right.
How can someone who's not religious relate to this concept?
You're right. This step might resonate differently for different people.
Yeah.
It's important to acknowledge
Huh?
that God's plan can be interpreted in various ways.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to refer to
Right.
a specific religious deity.
Right.
Some might see it as trusting in a higher power,
Okay.
the universe,
Mm.
or even their own intuition.
So it's more about having faith in something beyond yourself,
Exact.
whether you call it God, destiny, or simply the flow of life.
It's about recognizing
Okay.
that you're not in complete control,
Right.
that there are forces at play
Uh-huh.
that you may not fully understand.
Yeah.
But instead of letting that create anxiety,
Uh-huh.
you choose to trust that things are unfolding as they should,
Right.
even when you can't see the bigger picture.
That's a really helpful way to reframe it
Yeah,
because it takes the pressure off
exactly.
of having to figure everything out on your own. And
Right.
it allows for a sense of surrender
Yeah.
and acceptance.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between taking action
Yeah.
and surrendering to the unknown.
Okay.
So you do your part,
Uh-huh.
but you also trust that the universe will support you
Okay.
in ways you might not even be able to imagine.
I'm starting to see how these three steps,
Yeah.
changing your mindset, taking action,
Mm-hmm.
and trusting in a bigger plan,
Right.
all work together.
Yeah, they do.
They're not isolated actions,
Right.
but interconnected parts of a larger process.
That's a great observation.
Thank you.
They complement and reinforce each other.
Yeah.
You can't truly take effective action
Okay.
if you're stuck in a victim mentality.
Right.
And taking action without any sense of trust
Yeah.
can lead to burnout and frustration.
So it's like a dance between effort and surrender,
Exactly.
action and trust.
Yeah,
You're not just passively waiting for things to happen,
right.
but you're also not trying to force things to go your way.
Exactly.
They're actively participating
Right.
in co-creating your reality. But you're also open to the possibility that the universe might have something even better in store for you
Yeah,
than what you initially envisioned.
that's a really empowering message.
It is.
Yeah, it allows you to take responsibility for your life
Uh-huh.
without feeling like you have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders.
So we've delved into each of his three steps.
Yeah.
Shifting to a victor mindset,
Okay.
taking concrete actions,
Right.
and embracing trust in a bigger plan, whether that's God, the universe, or something else.
Right.
What stands out to you as we reflect on this three-step process?
What's particularly interesting is how these steps can be applied to any area of life,
Oh, yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about career success
Right.
or financial abundance.
Yeah.
You can apply these principles to your relationships, your health, your creativity, any area where you feel stuck
Yeah.
or disempowered.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember
Yeah.
that this is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
You know, you might move in and out of the beggar's position
Yeah, for sure.
at different times in your life,
Uh-huh.
and that's okay.
It's about becoming aware of your own patterns
Yeah.
and having the tools
Right.
to shift your mindset
Mm-hmm.
and take action when you find yourself slipping back into that feeling of powerlessness and dependence.
So what are some key takeaways for our listener as we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
Well, firstly, I think it's important to recognize that moving out of the beggar's position is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time fix,
Right.
but rather a commitment to cultivating
Yeah.
a new way of thinking and being in the world.
And it's about embracing a sense of agency.
Right.
And recognizing that you have the power to shape your own life.
Yeah.
Even in the face of challenges and setbacks.
Exactly.
Okay.
And while taking action is crucial, it's also important to remember the role of trust.
Yeah.
Trusting in something bigger than yourself can provide a sense of peace and support
Right.
as you navigate those ups and downs of life.
Now, as we move towards the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I'm curious to hear what's resonating most with you, the listener.
Yeah.
Which of these steps feels most challenging for you? And what practical examples from your own life come to mind
Right.
as we've been discussing this concept of the beggar's position?
Good questions.
You know, it's just so easy to fall into that trap of just waiting for things to happen to us.
Yeah.
You know, instead of actually getting out there and shaping our own lives. And I think Apostle Loja's message is like this really powerful reminder that we actually have a lot more control than we realize.
I think what's crucial here is his emphasis on personal accountability. You know, it's not about blaming external factors for our circumstances.
Right.
It's about taking ownership of our choices and our actions.
He doesn't shy away from the tough love, does he?
No, he doesn't.
He's like, stop complaining and start doing it. It's like a wake-up call for anyone who's been stuck in a rut, feeling like a victim of circumstance.
And it's not just about external circumstances, is it?
No.
It's also about the internal dialogue that we have with ourselves.
Right.
The beggar's mindset can manifest in our thoughts and beliefs.
Oh, okay.
Just as much as in our outward actions.
So it's not just about changing what we do, but also changing how we think.
Exactly.
Challenging those limiting beliefs that keep us stuck in a cycle of dependence and self-doubt.
It's about cultivating a mindset of abundance, possibility, and self-belief. It's about recognizing that we are worthy of receiving the blessings life has to offer, but also that we have a responsibility to co-create those blessings through our own efforts.
I like that. And his message is a really powerful antidote to that victim mentality that can sometimes feel really prevalent in our culture these days. He's reminding us that we have the power to choose a different path, to step into our greatness, and create a life that is truly fulfilling.
It's an invitation to reclaim our agency, to step into our power, and to become the authors of our own stories.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a call to action for anyone who's been feeling lost, stuck, or disempowered.
You know, resonates most with me is his emphasis on the importance of aligning ourselves with a bigger purpose, what he calls God's plan. And whether you interpret that literally or metaphorically, I think the underlying message is about finding our purpose and living in accordance with it.
Exactly.
But how do we actually go about finding that alignment?
That's a great question.
It can feel pretty elusive sometimes.
I think it starts with introspection.
Okay.
You know, what are your passions? What are your values? What makes you feel truly alive and fulfilled?
Yeah.
And the answers to those questions can provide clues about your unique purpose.
And it's not always some grand sweeping thing, is it?
Not at all.
It can be about finding meaning and purpose in the everyday moments, in the way we connect with others, in the work we do, even in the challenges we face.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about bringing intention and awareness to everything we do. Asking ourselves, how does this align with my values? How does this contribute to the bigger picture? How can I make this meaningful?
So it's less about finding some specific preordained path, more about creating a life that reflects our authentic selves, our values and our passions.
It's about recognizing that we have a unique contribution to make to the world.
Exactly. And trusting that our unique contribution is needed and valuable, even if we don't always see the immediate impact.
I think each of us is a piece of a larger puzzle.
I like that.
Yeah.
And when we step into our purpose, we help to create
a more beautiful and complete picture.
I love that analogy.
And it takes the pressure off of having to figure everything out on our own.
Right.
You know, we can trust that we're part of something larger, that we're supported and guided, even when the path seems uncertain.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into Apostle Israel Aloja's message.
Yeah.
We've explored this whole concept of the beggar's position, the mindset shift that's needed to break free from it, and those 3 powerful steps to creating a more fulfilling life. As we wrap up, what's your final takeaway for our listener today?
If you were to completely reject the beggar's position in your own life,
yeah,
what would that look like practically?
okay.
What actions would you take differently?
Mm-hmm.
What beliefs would you need to shift?
Yeah.
And how can you start living today
Right.
as the empowered, purposeful being you were meant to be?
Those are really powerful questions to ponder.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
And we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning,
Yes.
and keep striving to create the life you truly desire.
Absolutely.